For decades, there's been this one big question hanging over everything. Are we alone? And maybe more importantly, does the government already know the answer? Well, believe it or not, we might finally have some clarity. The Pentagon just dropped its most comprehensive historical report ever on what they call UAPs, or Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. So we're going to dig in and break down what this massive, nearly 80-year review actually found.
I mean, this is really the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? It's the ultimate conspiracy theory, but for a lot of people, it's also the ultimate hope. The idea that we're not alone, and that the government has the proof, tucked away in some secret hangar. This one question has fueled so much fascination, and, as it turns out, a whole lot of official investigations for a very long time.
And look, this isn't just something from movies or TV shows. The government's own report, the one we're talking about, it calls this out directly. They call it a persistent narrative. Actually, their entire investigation was pretty much designed to answer that one simple question. Is there any truth to this story? So let's see what they did to find out. Okay, so to finally get some answers, the Department of Defense set up a whole new office. It's called AARO, which stands for the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And their mission? Well, it was huge. They were tasked with doing a total deep dive, a historical review of every single official UAP investigation, going all the way back to the 1940s. And when I say the scale was massive, I mean it. They were digging through everything, classified files, unclassified archives, re-examining all those old cases. And this part is absolutely crucial. They actually interviewed around 30 people, folks who claimed to have direct, first-hand knowledge of these supposed secret programs. The whole point was for this to be the definitive historical statement from the government on this topic. So one thing becomes really clear right away. The government's interest in UFOs is not new. Not at all. It's kind of come in waves, You've got the really early stuff like Project Sign back in the 40s. Then came the big one, Project Blue Book, which looked into over 12,000 sightings. After that, things went quiet for a long time, but then interest picked back up with newer programs like ATIP. And all of that has led to where we are today with this one centralized office, AARO. It's been a long and definitely sporadic search. All right, now we get to the main event. This is the core of the report. AARO took all those big claims, the most famous stories that have really fueled this whole cover-up narrative for years, and they investigated them one by one. So, what did they find? The answer they came back with? Zero. Let that sink in. After looking at decades of investigations, from 1945 all the way to today, after sifting through literally thousands of cases, the number of UAP sightings that AARO, or any official investigation before it, has ever confirmed to be extraterrestrial technology is a big, fat zero. And that right there is the central conflict of this whole thing. On one side, you've got this epic story of a huge government conspiracy to hide and reverse engineer alien tech. And on the other side, you have this report's conclusion: there is just no empirical evidence. AARO is basically saying that every time they went looking for one of these secret alien tech programs, it turned out to be one of two things: either a misidentified human secret program or simply never existed in the first place. Let's get into some of the specific examples they looked at. Okay, so check this one out. This is a really powerful claim they investigated. An interviewee told them a story, a second-hand account, about a specific, named senior military officer. And the story was that this officer described in detail physically touching an extraterrestrial craft that was just floating inside a secret building. I mean, that sounds like the ultimate smoking gun, right? Direct physical contact? But here's the thing. When AARO went and actually interviewed that officer, he completely denied it, flat out, said he had absolutely no knowledge of any off-world tech. He did have a theory, though. He suggested that if a story like that got started, it must have been a garbled version of the time he touched an F-117 Nighthawk. And you have to remember, back then, the F-117 was top secret, and its shape was so radical, so bizarre, it would have looked completely alien to pretty much anyone who saw it. All right, so if testimony can be misconstrued, what about cold, hard physical evidence? For years, we've heard these stories about a strange metallic fragment, supposedly pulled from a crashed UFO, that had these amazing, almost magical properties. This piece of alien metal is a huge cornerstone of the whole reverse engineering story. Well, AARO actually got their hands on a sample of this stuff, And they didn't just look at it, they, along with the US Army and a top science lab, did a full-blown analysis. And their conclusion? It's a man-made alloy. It's mostly magnesium, zinc, and bismuth. It was made right here on Earth and, sorry to say, has no exceptional or anti-gravity powers at all. Now, you might have heard this code name before, Kona Blue. It pops up a lot in whistleblower testimony, and it's often held up as proof of a secret UAP program. But the AARO report tells a different story. It turns out Kona Blue wasn't a secret program at all. It was a secret proposal. A bunch of people pitched an idea to the Department of Homeland Security. They basically said, hey, we think this alien tech is out there. You should give us money to go find it and reverse engineer it. But in the end, DHS leadership looked at the proposal and rejected it, saying it didn't have any merit. So, this leads to the next big question, right? If it's not aliens, then what in the world are people seeing? What explains all these thousands of sightings over the years? What's up there in the sky? And the report's main answer is kind of mind-blowing in its simplicity. For decades, a lot of the time, we weren't seeing their secrets, we were seeing our own. AARO's conclusion is that a massive number of UAP sightings, especially back in the Cold War era, were really just people spotting top-secret American aircraft and spy tech. I mean, just take a look at some of these things. There was the flying pancake, the AARO car, which was literally a project to build a flying saucer. Think about spy planes like the U-2, flying way higher than commercial pilots in the 50s thought was even possible. And then, of course, you've got the crazy angular shapes of stealth aircraft like the F-117 and the B-2 bomber. Just try to imagine seeing any of those things streaking across the sky before anyone knew they existed. You didn't think, oh, that's a new plane. You'd think, that's a UFO. Well, you know, the report doesn't just stop at debunking these cases. It actually tries to answer a much deeper question. If the hard evidence just isn't there, then why is this belief in a massive government cover-up so powerful? Why does it stick around? And they actually point to a perfect storm of factors. First, you have legitimate government secrecy. The military really was hiding super advanced planes, and that secrecy creates an information vacuum. Second, public trust in the government has gone way down since the 1950s, which makes a conspiracy story feel a lot more believable. Third, just think about pop culture. We've had decades of books, movies, and TV shows that have basically trained us to think about alien visitors. And finally, the report talks about something called circular reporting, where a small group of people just keep citing the same old unverified stories over and over again, which creates this echo chamber where the claims seem much more widespread than they really are. So, at the end of the day, the report's conclusion is just about as clear as it gets. And I'm talking a direct quote from their summary here. In nearly 80 years of the government officially looking into this stuff, from Project Sign all the way up to AARO today, not a single investigation has ever confirmed that any UAP sighting was extraterrestrial technology. It is without a doubt the most definitive and blunt statement the US government has ever made on this whole subject. But this whole thing leaves us with one last really fascinating question. Let's say we take the report at its word. The U in UAP, the unidentified part, that still matters a lot. So if it's not aliens, what do these sightings tell us about the absolute cutting edge of human technology? What do they reveal about the blind spots we might have in our own national security? And maybe most of all, what does this whole saga show us about that powerful mix of secrecy, belief, and just that timeless human urge to look up at the sky and wonder, what's out there?